You're listening to Two Girls, One Crossword.
Remember when we were like recording at 7:45 on a Friday morning would be so much better than recording at 6:30 on a Thursday evening?
I still think that it's better because I like
do
to have
too.
my Thursday evenings. But some days, I don't know, maybe it's a change in season. I'm just tired these days.
We're
But
tired
I'm also
girls.
not going to bed as early as I was before. Like, because
Who is she?
sometimes I get into bed and I'm like, oh, I'm going to bed early. But, then I fuck around for
Yeah, no, for sure.
like 3 hours.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, I'll climb into bed at 10. And then it's like 11:30 and I'm like, I have like a thing on my phone set to be like, bedtime reminder, wind down, like all this stuff. And I ignore all of them. And it's like, that's why you feel tired in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Well, also apparently with your menstrual cycle, you like it. I feel like it changes my sleep abilities. Like there's some days where I like cannot sleep. I'm just not tired. And then it's always like around the same time of the month. So could be that.
Could be that.
Maybe we don't do the podcast on those those weeks.
Sorry, we're menstruating. We can't possibly do the podcast.
This is a women-run podcast, and we actually post based on our cycle. So they say you're supposed to exercise based on your cycle. I don't see why we can't do our podcast based on our cycle.
Exactly.
We got to sync up, though.
We've got to sync up first and foremost. Second of all, I need to actually get the cycle down. Like, I need it tracked. It's hard, though. Especially if you do birth control, it's even harder to kind of really pin down when
that's
certain
easy
things...
Well, I guess it depends what you're doing. If you're doing the pill, it's easy.
If you're doing the pill, it's easy. Yeah.
Anyways, I use the app even though they've told us not to. But
I know. I was like, I don't want to use the app because I'm like, they're gonna come for me. I don't.
You got to get like a special calendar just for it.
I know. I'll get a big moon calendar and I'll hang it above my desk so that anybody that comes into the apartment can see.
Knows.
I'll be like, oh, I'm in my, what's one of the phases? My Loodle phase right now. So.
Sorry, it's Loodle phase week. You know how that is.
Happy Women's History Month, everyone. This is, so ladies talking about lady things is okay. So.
It is more than okay. And we're going to continue to talk about lady things, maybe, depending on what our topics are, on our podcast that you're listening to, Two Girls, One Crossword. I'm Grace Topinka.
I'm Chelsea Rowan. Yes, who knows? We may have lady-oriented topics today. We may not. But here's the thing. We're both ladies, so everything's a lady topic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's also your favorite Podword Crosscast.
Oh, shit. Yes. It's 7:45
Lest you forget.
It's 7:45 on a Friday.
Shall we just get into our Pollapalooza?
Let's hop right into the Pollapalooza.
Our Pollapalooza is not very exciting, I hate to say. I was kind of struggling with, like, what do I poll these people on? Because last episode, our topic was on Uptalk, Vocal Fry.
Oh, right. Oh, my God.
What was mine on?
What were you talking about? Wow.
I really don't know. On and Off Color was the name.
Colors. Right?
That was last? No, I didn't post it. Well, that's what happens. And sometimes I make myself like really try and remember.
Struggles. I'm
awful.
Also struggling. Yeah.
But anyways, so I used yours. Apparently mine was not poll related. But I asked, what's your go-to filler word? But it's also hard to know because,
unless someone is actively telling you, oh my God, you sound so annoying when you say like.
Or if you listen to yourself on a podcast.
Yeah.
I have a lot of filler words, though. That's my issue.
Same.
So options were like, I definitely do, actually / basically, and well. But it was a 4-way tie, so.
Damn. I feel like sometimes I want the Twitter polls to have more options so that we can really get like a wider smattering of understanding. But hey, I don't know how long Twitter's going to be around. It may not matter that it only has 4 options. But here's the thing. I think my filler word is like or I do a lot of
Don't we all? Yeah. I do like a lot, for sure.
It's hard to know.
Everyone listening is like, yeah, you guys do this, this, and this all the time.
All the time. Yeah.
Well, you know what? That's fine.
I think the doesn't come when I'm like chatting with you like this, but because we're reading from research, I find that oh my God, when I'm trying to keep up with where I am in my research, or, you know, I finish a thought, we chat, and then I'm like, oh, where do I go next? I'm like, okay, and you know, and that's kind of where it all comes to play.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we can be faulted for that.
I'm gonna use it more.
Should we?
It's Women's History Month,
natural.
so I'm gonna use as much vocal fry and uptuck and likes and ums as possible.
So get over it. Shall we go into our heights and shites?
Yes. Do you care if I start us off?
Of course not. Why would I care?
I have no idea. I've had an incredibly busy week, so I don't have as many puzzles as I normally would. But there's news in the cross world that I'm happy to report.
This just in.
If you are a longtime listener of this podcast, you might have heard us talk about the Orca Awards in the past. There's the I'm going to think about it so much now. Okay, I'm not going to say anything else about it. The Orca Awards, we've talked about them in the past. And the winners were announced while we were away. Stop laughing on the Zoom.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. So the Orca Awards are an annual celebration of creativity in crosswords. And this is directly from the Diary of a Crossword Fiend website, which is amazing, by the way. If you're looking for a crossword resource, they review all of the mainstream crosswords. So if you're like, I don't know the answer to this, you can go to that, you know, blog and figure it out. Anyway, so they posted the winners. And this is a description of the Orca Awards from that blog. The Orca Awards were created by prolific solver Sam Donaldson to honor outstanding achievements in crossword construction and editing. For 10 years, he determined the winners and honorable mentions in 10 different categories. So we're not going to call it every single winner, but I'll tell you some of the categories that they, you know, judge on. Best easy crossword of the year, best freestyle crossword of the year, best Sunday-sized crossword, best gimmick crossword, which is kind of the crosswords that Grace and I like, and then best clue. And I will tell you what the best clue was for this year. It's not from a puzzle that we've done, but show that you're up to date, ? And the answer was ask out. And it was from the puzzle Taking Shape by Bryant White in Spyscape from June 25th.
I love that.
Right? And then also the Constructor of the Year award went to Brooke Husick, which we cover a lot of Brooke's puzzles.
Classic Brooke.
Classic. So yeah, congratulations to everybody who won or was honorably mentioned. Congrats to Brooke for Constructor of the Year. Well deserved. And we will include the link of the blog post for the Orca Awards in our episode description if you're curious. If you're looking for additional crosswords to solve, then yeah, that's what we'll do. So congrats.
And, you know, if you didn't get nominated, you didn't win an Orca Award, don't worry, because you might be recognized in our heights and shites. So
oh, nice. It's true.
Yeah, it's not as prestigious, but some people really, you know, look forward to it, and we can send you a certificate
for the low price of 3 easy payments of $99.99.
Just pay for shipping and printing and ink, and we got you.
And labor, of course.
Of course.
Of course. What you got, kid?
Okay, I did the Friday, March 10th New York Times, which I normally don't do, but, you know, we were off last week. Anyways, Claire Rimkus is the constructor.
Nice.
16 across, pantsless Disney character. Pooh, obviously.
Pooh. I was like, wait. I'm like going through all of the bottom halves of all the Disney characters.
Well, Donald Duck, too.
Sure.
18 across. It has a higher population of pigs than people. That's India. Iowa.
All right.
Iowa. That you're thinking of cows.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know if there's a higher population.
But yes, I am
definitely
thinking
a lot
of
cows. But I feel like Iowa has a lot of pigs. That's a trivia thing. So file that away in your brain.
Got it.
21 across, high on marijuana in slang. And it's not on pot as it normally is in the New York Times. It was actually baked. So shocked to see that in the New York Times.
Nice.
Another thing I didn't know, 51 across, vehicle whose name may or may not be derived from the phrase, just enough essential parts. Jeep. Jeep, just enough essential parts.
I would have gotten there. I'd gotten to the J and the first E. I would have gotten there. Wow. Okay.
26 down, like singer Michelle Williams and actress Michelle Williams.
Alto?
No relation.
Oh,
They
shit.
just have the same name.
Duh.
And then the last one from that puzzle, 36 down, service call, ? And the answer was amen.
Nice. Very good. Cute. I will stay on the Friday 10th train, except it's the New Yorker by Matthew Stock and Paolo Pasco. 12 down. Agent Cody Banks Organization. And the answer was CIA, of course.
Okay.
Yes.
Amazing.
I was obsessed with Agent Cody Banks, and the one when he went to London, loved it. Okay, I have a genuine question for Grace, but mostly for the listeners who like sports, specifically basketball. So obviously the New Yorker Fridays are themed, and so I thought this was part of the theme, but it very much was not a part of the theme. The theme was like yo ho ho and a bottle of rum, like Avast Me Hearties was the name of this puzzle, which I eventually found out when I solved the puzzle. And then I was like, wait, what in the GDH does this clue mean? So 22 down, Blank Madness, annual college basketball tournament held in St. Louis.
March?
You would think, right? The answer was Arch, ARCH. And so I did my due diligence. Usually I would not look this up because I don't care enough, but I did. I was like, I really don't understand why it's not March Madness. And so I'm looking it up. I'm like, March Madness versus Arch Madness, or what is Arch Madness? And everything that came up was like the NCAA tournament, March Madness, everything. I couldn't find anything on Arch Madness. Is this like a insider thing? Is this like a, like,
it's
what
not
is it?
part of the theme? Are you sure the clue didn't have like M before it? Like
there was
there
was no M's around it, and the theme had to do with the first syllables of the clued answers, and this was not, or like the themed answers, and this was not anywhere near any of the themed answers, because the themed answers got highlighted. So it's like, I don't know. Why
don't you write Paolo directly and ask?
Yeah, Paolo, what in the goddamn hell are you talking about?
I know you're probably really busy, but can you clarify this for us?
Can you tell me what this means? And then 48 across, probiotic dairy beverage, and the answer is Yakult, Yakult, which you can get at H Mart if you're interested. They come in these like tiny little milk carton drink containers.
Mm-hmm.
If you like that kind of thing, it's basically like drinking a drinkable yogurt. But if you're not a yogurt girl like me, but you want to get your probiotics, you could mix it like in a smoothie or something with like fruit. I know Grace wouldn't do that either, but
no.
It's tasty when it's mixed together. I struggle with milk yogurt consistency when it's raw.
I like Greek yogurt also.
That's crazy. I don't have a problem with Greek yogurt. I have a problem with people who use Greek yogurt for breakfast. It's like, oh, am I going to put Greek yogurt or sour cream on my strawberries this morning? It's like, they taste the exact same, so...
Well, I like to eat the Flips cookies and cream Greek yogurt little thing like every day, and it's amazing. So don't come for me.
I won't.
And my Greek yogurt.
Only if you put plain Greek yogurt on fruit and you tell me it tastes good.
I would never eat fruit in the morning. You know that.
I know. You would never lead me astray.
Mm-mm.
At least not there. Anyway, that's what I have from that puzzle.
Okay. Speaking of, well, this is not really a gimmick, but the Sunday Washington Post March 12th puzzle, Director's Cut. It was, based on the Oscars, because that was the day that the Oscars aired, and I love to see it. So there was a bunch of circled letters, and some of those clues would be like 24 across, sternums, and then in parentheses, platoon. So the answer was breastbones, but stone would be circled. That's the director of Platoon.
Oh, okay.
45 across, Dead Man's Party Band with a rhyming name, in parentheses, Parasite. And the answer was Oingo Boingo with bong. circled. So it was kind of like that all the way down. And then I'm like, okay, that's cute. Like the directors' names are in these things. Director's cut, they're kind of like, broken up in the thing. But then it says 113 across. Oscar-winning film whose Oscar-winning director is spelled out by the letters cutting the circled Oscar-winning directors. So like in all the other clues, like Stone, for example, was ST from breast and then bones. B wasn't circled, then it was ONE. So the B broke up Stone. For Oingo Boingo, the I broke up Bong. And then if you go all the way, it's Bigelow.
Okay.
And I knew, because the answer was the Hurt Locker. And that's the director of the Hurt Locker. But I was like, okay, that's fine. But then when the end clue, tied it all together.
He always has a little surprise at the end. Yeah. Classic.
Some other things I liked from that puzzle. 46 down, the most blank limited edition cookie released in 2023, and that is Oreo, the most Oreo, which I would like to look up what that is. But for all you constructors out there, Blackpink did do an Oreo collab. If you need a new Oreo,
there you go.
Clue.
It's a great color combo, black, pink. I mean, hello.
It was match made in heaven.
110
across, quinceañera prop was tiara.
Amazing.
Tiara. 99 across was kids blank sheet with a maze, maybe. It was kids menu.
Oh my god, that was, my life. I loved the kids menu.
I know.
Color on it. Go to Friendly's, get the kids menu.
My grandparents used to take us to Pizza Hut back when we used to eat in Pizza Hut.
Funny.
And then 32 across, I'm tired of discussing this, in quotes, and the answer was drop it.
Leave it on the floor.
Got from that one.
Cute. From the Thursday, March 16th New Yorker by Robin Weintraub. Sorry about the lisp there, unintentional.
She's wittily doing the gwitty.
I am trying my hardest. Okay, 26 across. Pickleball court divider. And the answer was net. And I just have a question for you and any listeners out there. Is pickleball like a new thing? Because I feel like
it's a thing that's been around for a while, but it's definitely having a resurgence. Like, people love it now.
People are obsessed with pickleball. And I was like, what in the GDH is pickleball? And it's
like tiny tennis.
Tiny tennis, right?
Tiny as ping pong. Like a mix between, like, somewhere in the middle.
Right. People are like, I'm just going to say it. People are horny for pickleball. They are.
Can you blame them?
I don't know yet. Maybe you should take me to play pickleball and I'll let you know.
Okay.
Also from this puzzle, 62 across, one of our previous topics showed up. Iditarod vehicles. The answer was sleds. So episode 144 come out on top. I talked about the Iditarod race. Would recommend. It's kind of fun. And then 4 down, you can skip it. And the answer is rope because you can skip rope.
Nice.
What else you got?
The Tuesday, March 14th, New Yorker by Wynaloo.
Nice.
35 across. This took over the whole, was like the entire width of the puzzle.
Cute.
Enduring displays of affection. And the answer? Matching tattoos.
Cute.
We love to see it.
Cute.
Even though I'm too scared to get a matching tattoo.
I know.
12 down, guy with a boy toy, ? And the answer was Geppetto.
That's hilarious.
Right?
That's hilarious.
And then I only had 2 from that, but I also did the Wednesday, March 15th New Yorker by Brooke Husick, speaking of. 37 across, period for focusing on practical matters to an astrologist. Virgo season.
Cute. Of course.
38 across, cheesy get-together. A fondue party.
I should host a fondue party. My nickname's Cheese, for anybody who may have missed that in the many episodes.
You should, and we have.
We have had fondue. I actually have a little fondue container thing. And you can get fondue like cheese at Trader Joe's. It's really simple. So.
Yeah, so.
Would recommend.
Be stopping you. 42 down, synthetic eyelash for short, is Falsy.
Cute.
And I feel like Falsy is a brand of fake eyelashes, isn't it? But I feel like it's kind of become, it's the way like Band-Aid.
Yes.
And Kleenex. Falsy.
Yes.
And then the last one, 15 across, princess with poofy buns. And the answer is Leia. But I argue that Leia's buns I wouldn't say they were poofy.
I think they're rather tight.
Tightly coiled, yeah.
Yeah. It's not like she's got big, poofy, messy buns. She's got like tightly wrapped,
like cinnamon roll
buns. Yeah. But hey.
So.
Explain yourself.
Bring it up with Wine-a-Lou.
Yeah.
Or no, sorry, that was Brooke Cusick. Bring it up with Brooke.
Brooke, Constructor of the Year.
Explain yourself.
Explain yourself. I'm going to end with the Thursday, March 16th New York Times. I just want to talk about the theme. I thought it was cute. Rebecca Goldstein constructed this puzzle. The revealer for this puzzle was 63 across. Plant seen rolling through this puzzle? ? And the answer was tumbleweed. And so the word weed, obviously it's not a rebus. It's spelled across 4 squares in a square. Kind of take up different themed answers throughout the puzzle, but the organization of the letters, like it might be W in the lower left corner and then E above it, E next to it, and then D next to the W.
Like it's tumbling.
And then next iteration, the W is in the top left corner and it goes on that way. And so it kind of tumbles throughout the puzzle. But what I thought was cool is that the themed answers, reading the themed answers just as they are, you're like, that's not a real word. It's because you have to read the themed answer with the tumbled weed throughout the puzzle.
Oh.
For instance, sorry for any listeners listening through Spotify or something where you have no idea what I'm talking about. I am pantomiming to Grace, so she's kind of picking up on this. We're on YouTube as well. 17 across. Form of racing that requires 1 foot on the ground at all time. And if you were just to read 17 across as answered, you would read spee walking, S-P-E walking. Okay? But if you read it with kind of like bumping up and following the tumbling weed, you would get speed walking.
Oh, I see. Right.
So 26 across, complicated situation. The answer reads tangle ebb. But the full answer, if you read it with the tumbling weed, is tangled web. So, very fun. And then also, just learned something. I thought this was interesting. Golf's crazy. 61 across. Golfers' involuntary wrist spasms while putting with, quote, the. And it's called the tips. Tips. Apparently, that spasm you get in your wrist when you're playing golf, if you get that spasm in your wrist when you're playing golf, it's called the tips. I thought that was interesting.
I wouldn't know. I try not to play golf.
Yeah. I've asked her every weekend. She says no. And that's just Grace. And that's all I have. That's all I got.
Well, I guess you should flip a coin.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm done too.
She's done. I'm going to flip the coin now.
Let's see, because I've been going second a lot lately, so I don't know who to trust anymore.
Tails.
Ah, well, maybe I need to just say stuff like that, and then
the gods looked down on her. Or positively, looked down. Not look down.
Look down, look down. Look
you know what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
They're favoring her today.
My topic comes from the Sunday Washington Post by Evan Bernhal's Director's Cut, March 12th. Okay. 37 across. Type of musician who will lead us to reason per the lyrics to Stairway to Heaven. And the answer? The Pied Piper.
The Pied Piper? Okay.
Another fairy tale topic, which I like to do, but...
Nice. I'm excited. I know nothing about this character, so...
Well, my topic is on the Pied Piper of Hamelin, is his, full title. Most of my info is from a article on the BBC.com called The Grimm Truth Behind the Pied Piper by Raphael Kadushin. And yes, Grimm Truth, like the Grimm brothers. So, have you heard, anything about this?
I've heard the Pied Piper used.
But do you know what his whole deal is?
I don't know if I do. I'm curious to see if any of this comes back to me. But right now, if you ask me to tell you TLDR about the Pied Piper, I got nothing. I got 0%.
Right. Well, you maybe when you were a kid, you watched the Disney short about him. It's from 1933. But this is the plot of the Disney version. So it takes place in the 13th century. A piper wearing pied clothing. Pied means multicolored, like pied horses. So that's why he's the Pied Piper, because he's wearing colorful clothing. He promises to rid the German town of Hamlin of a rat infestation. The mayor promises to pay him money if he succeeds. So the Pied Piper uses his pipe to lure the rats, who in the Disney version look like Mickey Mouse, into a giant cheese wheel. And then he tells the mayor, he's like, okay, I did it. And then the mayor's like, well, I'm not going to pay you. So as revenge, he hypnotizes the town's children with his music, the same way he hypnotized the rats, but he leads the children away into a paradise called Joyland, never to be seen again by the townspeople. Now,
and this is the plot of the Disney one.
Yeah, and as usual, the Disney version is a little nicer than the original version. So,
damn, okay.
We kind of went over this in our Hansel and Gretel and our Cinderella episode. Disney took this story from the German book Children's and Household Tales, written in 1812 by the Grimm brothers, also known as the Grimm brothers fairy tales. And if you remember in the old episodes, it's required reading in German elementary school. But also, like I mentioned in those episodes, these tales were not intended for children, like the original version of this book. It was instead a collection and documentation of German folklore that until that time had been passed orally. So,
right.
But, even though the book wasn't meant for kids, because there was magical elements, because the stories often had morals, kids and parents kind of gravitated towards them. So the Grimm brothers would keep rewriting the stories to make them a little more kid friendly. Sure. Back to some differences between the Disney versus the original version. So, in the original story, the rats were lured into a local river and drowned, not into a cheese wheel. So it's a little darker than that. The mayor accused the Pied Piper of bringing the rats into town, of starting the infestation as an extortion plot. In the original story, the Pied Piper comes back on St. John and Paul's Day when all the adults are in church, and then he lures the children into a mountain or a cave where they disappeared forever.
Oof.
In the Disney version, there is a kid with crutches, and once he reaches Joyland, or the paradise where the Pied Piper leads them, he no longer needs to use his crutches anymore. But in the original story, there were always 3 kids left behind. One was on crutches, couldn't keep up with the other kids. The other one was deaf, couldn't hear the Pied Piper music. And then the third was blind and couldn't follow the kids. So these 3, in the original version, these 3 kids stayed behind, and they're the ones who tell the adults what happened. But where did this folklore story come from?
Yeah.
What if I told you that there seems to have been a mass disappearance of children from Hamelin, Germany, and nobody knows why? And that the Pied Piper isn't just a fairy tale, but it may be based on an actual historical event.
Dude.
Well,
I'd be shocked if you told me that.
Well, I'm telling you that. And if you go to Hamelin, Germany, today, you'll see that they've embraced the Pied Piper story, and they use it as a tourist attraction. So a lot of bakeries and restaurants have rat-themed,
Cute.
food. And there's a Pied Piper festival every summer.
Wanna go?
Maybe. If you take the Pied Piper tour of Hamelin, you'll come across what they call the Rat Hunter House. There's a private residence dating back to 1602, and there's an inscription from that time on the window that reads, AD 1284, on the 26th of June, the day of St. John and St. Paul, 130 children born in Hamelin were led out of town by a piper wearing multicolored clothes. After passing the Calvary near the Koppenberg, they disappeared forever. Koppenberg was a mountain ranger hill. That's not the only evidence of the event happening. So there's an entry in Hamelin's town records dating to 1384 that says, quote, "It is 100 years since our children left." A town gate from 1556 says, in the year 1556, 272 years after the magician stole 130 children from the city, this gate was founded. The 15th century Lüneburg manuscript is an early German account of the event. It mentions it. And there's also a stained glass window of the St. Nikolai Church from the 17th century that depicts a Pied Piper leading several ghostly white children.
Weird.
So, all of these records reference a similar story of 130 children or young people vanishing on the 26th of June, 1284, following a Pied Piper to a place called Calvary or Kopen. The last place the kids were seen in all of these stories was Bungelosenstrasse, which translates to a street without drums, and to this day, no music or singing is allowed to be played on the street.
Wow.
So, what happened on June 26, 1284? There are multiple theories. One common theory about, from lay people who are just like, oh yeah, the Pied Piper, that's probably a metaphor for like the Black Plague because it has all these rats and stuff. But just clearing that up, the timeline does not work for that. Like, it wasn't the right time. So it's not Black Plague related, which is a common misconception. But as far as like, more historically based theories on what happened on that day, Wibke Reimer, the project coordinator at the Hamlin Museum, says that there's a theory that it was part of a youth migration to Eastern Europe fueled by economic depression. Quote, in this scenario, the Pied Piper played the role of a so-called locator or recruiter. They were responsible for organizing migrations to the east and were said to have worn colorful garments and played an instrument to attract the attention of possible settlers. So, proof of this shows up because last names that were common in Hamlin at the time also show up in these, like, where these people would have been migrating outside of Berlin and stuff. So, potentially there was a migration there.
And they were specifically looking for young people?
Yeah. Well, because some people say, like, the German translation might just also mean young people and not just children.
Sure.
At the time, there was also something known as the St. Vitus dance, aka a dance plague, aka Sydenham's chorea, chorea, Chorea. I should have looked up how to pronounce that. But this was a form of mass hysteria where the dance plague could spread from individuals to large groups, and everyone would have an unshakable compulsion to dance feverishly, sometimes for weeks, often leaping and singing, and sometimes hallucinating to the point of exhaustion and occasionally death. This is a real thing.
What?
It's more common in females than males, and most cases affect children between the ages of 5 and 15.
Weird.
There is a documented incident of a 13th century outbreak, a dance fever, if you will, that occurred south of Hamlin in the town of Erfurt, where a group of youths were documented as wildly gyrating as they traveled out of town, ending up 20 kilometers away in a neighboring town. According to some stories, some of the children died shortly after, and those who survived were left with chronic tremors. Some theorize that Hamlin witnessed a similar plague, dancing to the figurative tune of the piper. But these theories, the mass migration and this dance fever, don't explain why everything points to a singular day of June 26, because if those theories were true, it would have kind of happened over time. Coincidentally, June 26 was the day of the midsummer celebrations. So, there's regions in Germany where midsummer was celebrated by lighting fires on the hills, and as many Pied Piper stories mention hills, some people believe that a pagan Pied Piper was leading children around during a midsummer celebration when Christian factions, hoping to convert the pagans, massacred the kids or stole them and brought them to monasteries. So, could be something like that. Or it could have been a natural disaster, like a mudslide that occurred during the midsummer festivals. And you may have noticed that none of these incidents involve rats. Well, that's because the rats weren't added to the story until 1559. Maybe after more plagues had happened. So, they were just adding rats in.
Sure. They were just like, more rats.
Yeah.
We need more rats here.
They're like, rats are a big part of our history. Put them in. So no one knows for sure what happened.
So wild.
But the Pied Piper legend lives on, and there are many references to it throughout pop culture, like our crossword clue mentioning Stairway to Heaven.
Okay.
But here's some other examples. So, in the 2001 film Shrek, the Pied Piper is seen at Shrek's swamp, where every fairy tale creature has gathered to escape Lord Farquaad. And then, in the 2010 sequel, Shrek Forever After, Pied Piper is a minor character. He is hired by the main villain, Rumpelstiltskin, to use his music to lead the rebelling ogres to their imprisonment. And the song he plays, Shake Your Groove Thing. ABBA has a song called The Piper from their 1980 album Super Trooper. The song Lose Yourself by Eminem contains the line, best believe somebody's paying the Pied Piper, which seems to be mixing the Pied Piper with the saying pay the piper, which some people say is not related. Most linguists say it comes from the English phrase, who pays the piper calls the tune, or who pays the piper calls the tune.
Who pays the piper calls the tune. Yeah.
But some people say it might reference Pied Piper, but I feel like it's just a metaphor, and it's people often combine them.
I feel like I've heard every British person I've ever met say that specific phrase. So
yeah, same. Radiohead's song Kid A has a line that goes, "Rats and children will follow me out of town." That's a reference to Pied Piper. And, of course, BTS released a song called Pied Piper in 2017.
Did they really? Interesting.
Yeah. Okay,
I'm like, let me read those lyrics and see what the hell's going on there.
I looked it up. It's a song that's mostly in Korean, but so this is also fun. In the Skyrim video game, The Elder Scrolls V, there's like a little whatever it's called. A task, a challenge,
a side quest.
A side quest, there you go. A mad magician called Hamlin, which is the name of the German town, is attempting to build an army of rat-like monsters to attack the people who mocked and imprisoned him.
I remember this side quest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, there you go. That's based on the Pied Piper.
Amazing.
I'm going to end with a quote from the BBC article.
All right.
If the tale suggests a possible historical tragedy, though it also offers an artistic redemption as well. The Pied Piper story, says Reimer, is, to our knowledge, known in at least 42 countries and 30 languages, maybe more, and it appears in international art, literature, and music. The Pied Piper is a shared heritage of many, and that cultural heritage connects people. Ultimately, then, the Piper didn't just fracture a community, he also, in the end, brought a larger one together. So obviously the story, stuck with people. It's not as popular as maybe Cinderella and Hansel and Gretel, but I do feel like it gets referenced a lot more. Like, there's no songs about Hansel and Gretel, but
For sure.
And that's only a couple of songs that reference the Pied Piper.
Right.
Obviously, it kind of lends itself to that because it's also music, but you know, it dips into this fear that everyone has of like losing children or, people that you're taking care of them being lured away and you like mysteriously and never seeing them again.
Yeah. That's just wild to me that it's potentially based off of like a true event.
And no one knows
what the what was going on. It's crazy.
But there's all these things in the town. They're like, the day 130 children went missing. It's like, how?
Like, what?
Why?
How? Like, I feel like it makes a little more sense, like, in contemporary time for 130 kids to go missing, just by virtue of the fact that, like, transportation is easier to, like, move a large mass of kids from one place to another. It's much faster nowadays. I just don't understand how you could move 130 kids so fast on a singular day. Potentially they were killed, of course, but that there'd be like no remnants of them, like their clothes or a shoe or a stampede, like the bushes were stampeded. Like, I don't know. It's wild to me. Yeah. Witches.
Well, it could also have been something, that did happen over time and the town just recognized it all on one day and that kind of, or who knows what really happened, but it turned into this folk story of like them all disappearing on midsummer.
And I also wonder too, like, what is the translation of lost? Like, did they like get lost and would never found, or were they taken from them and they just kind of had to accept that they were taken from them? I
believe it was like the Christian crusade type thing. That they
it
were
seems
like
likely.
During a pagan festival.
Yeah. They were like, this isn't going to work for us.
Yeah.
Woof. That's so interesting. You learn something new every day when you listen to this podcast. I'll tell you that right now.
There you go. Well, every week. Every week.
My topic comes from the Thursday, March 16th New Yorker by Robin Weintraub. One down. Plaid pattern on kilts.
Tartan.
I'm talking about tartan today. So we're hanging out in the aisles, both of us. Well, no, I guess you're in the continent.
No, I'm in Germany.
Sorry. We're in Europe at the very least.
At the very least.
I'm talking about tartan.
Carnegie Mellon, where my sister went to school, their mascot was the tartans. Just like a plaid pattern. I don't know. That was their mascot.
I should look up what the name of their tartan is and see.
You should. Yeah.
I should. If I had known, I would have done. Anyway, we're talking about tartan. So what is tartan? The official definition of the word tartan, according to the Scottish Register of Tartans Act 2008 from Section 2, is as follows. A design which is capable of being woven consisting of two or more alternating colored stripes which combine vertically and horizontally to form a repeated checkered pattern. That, my friends, simply is a tartan.
There you have it.
So yeah, essentially it's a pattern of interlocking stripes, and it's not to be confused or mistaken with plaid. This is just an aside. The word plaid actually comes from the Gaelic word for blanket. So a plaid is a blanket in Gaelic, okay? And it is specifically used in the context of Highland dress to refer to a large length of material. For example, the original kilt was known as the belted plaid, and it consisted of a length of cloth, basically a large blanket, that was gathered and belted at the waist. And these plaids were most often made from using tartan cloth, and so the confusion was born from that. So you would say you'd be wearing tartan, this massive tartan blanket around your waist held up by a belt, and it's called plaid in Gaelic. A blanket is called plaid in Gaelic. And you say, oh, I'm wearing a plaid. And it's like, no, you're wearing a blanket that's a tartan pattern, etc.
I see. Well, we really ran with that.
We ran. We took off. We're never coming home. So when you think of tartan, what do you think of? What do you see?
Like a skirt. A plaid skirt.
A plaid skirt.
Bagpipes. Green,
Bagpipes.
red. A lot of greens and reds. Maybe some
Yes.
yellows, some blues.
Yes, of course. Other people might think of Outlander, the TV show / book series, and Jamie Fraser,
Never
the
watched
Mackenzie clan. I read the first book, got halfway through the second book. I watched the TV show, and there's so much about it that I like. And clearly you would know that this is like something that I would watch. But I feel like Outlander is just more trauma porn than actual story. There's a lot of rape, and I'm just like, I can't do it. I really can't.
Yeah, that's fair.
Sadly, because it's exactly up my fucking street of what I would watch if all of that stuff was gone. Anyway, so you might also, when you think of tartan, you might also think of this phenomenon of clan-specific tartans or clan tartans, which are tartan designs that represent certain Scottish clans and families. While this is typical, it's not always so. So just kind of like setting the scene a little bit for you. We're going to hop into like very brief history of tartan. So Scottish records from the past several hundred years refer to tartan patterns or like the various tartan patterns a couple different ways. Mottled, marled, sun-dried, colored, but perhaps the most or the best description comes from the Gaelic word brechin. Sorry if I can't pronounce Gaelic. And brechin means checkered. So this is the best way to describe tartan, right? A check-like arrangement of a tartan pattern repeated over and over again until the desired length of cloth is achieved. So you got all this checkered pattern. It's really nice. The earliest known tartan in Scotland can be dated to the 3rd or 4th century AD, but in other parts of the world, tartan cloth has been found dating to approximately 3000 BC. Basically, anywhere that there has been dyed cloth, there has been tartan patterns. We are only going to be focusing on Scottish tartan right now, though, so apologies to everyone else. Back to Scotland. For centuries, tartan was a key part of everyday garb of the Scottish Highlands. So historically, Scotland has been divided essentially in half, the Highlands and the Lowlands, okay? And the big difference between these, one of the big differences is the languages spoken. I can't really get into everything. Anyway, so just so you know, the tartan was a huge feature of Highlander culture, so northern Scotland. And originally, tartan designs had no names and no symbolic meanings. It may have been true that certain colors of tartan could be representative of certain areas just by the fact that, like, they grew certain berries here, so they were able to dye tartan certain colors. So it was more like you'd see that color in this area. But it wasn't because the Mackenzie clan was like, this is our specific tartan, or so on and so forth. That didn't come until much later. So tartan was used to make items of clothing which are today considered traditional Scottish dress. Men might wear things called the pillabeg, which is the traditional word for kilt, or they might wear trews, Trews, which is tartan trousers. They're wild.
Ooh.
Like imagine like the most vibrant tartan you can, and then as trousers. Women wore, I'm so sorry for the pronunciation, currach, which is linen over their heads fastened under their chins, okay? Or they might wear a tanaag, which is a small square of tartan worn as like a shawl. And they might also wear the arised, which is a long colored tartan garment, which was, you would cover your head and it would go down your shoulders, down your back, around your waist. And so it was like tartan all the way down, but it was like an overcoat. So it wasn't like your only form of dress. It's like you'd have your dress on, then you put the arised on top of it, and you have tartan from head to toe.
Nice.
And it was usually connected at the breast by a big brooch or at the waist with a belt. The earliest tartans were simply checks of only 2 or 3 colors. Colors were extracted mainly from dye-producing plants, roots, etc., local to a specific geographical region. And then the practice of dyeing cloth advanced, and weavers were able to introduce more elaborate patterns, including more vivid colors. But you might think, oh, tartan was just worn by the local people in Scotland, but it was also worn by royalty and those close to royalty. In 1471, the treasurer to King James III purchased a length of tartan to gift to the king and queen. And then King James V wore tartan while hunting in the Highlands in 1538. And King Charles II wore a ribbon of tartan on his coat of arms, in his coat at his marriage in 1662, which actually I think is kind of cute, like to have like a sash of tartan if you're Scottish. Yeah. It's very nice. By the 17th and 18th centuries, tartan clothing started to be seen as a characteristic of Highland dress. Large-scale commercial weavers kind of had started production, and they were able to ship tartan all over, the British Isles and the continent of Europe. The most notably, William Wilson and Sons. That's one of the big producers of tartan. They were successful and the sole supplier of tartan to the Highland Regiment, so the army. They began producing cloth in large quantities, and they developed standard colors and patterns early on, because none of tartan was like really standardized. It was just like whatever you could find and whatever your weaver was able to make you. But when people started mass producing tartan is when they started standardizing. Oh, this is this type of tartan. This is that type of tartan. They first assigned numbers to identify the various patterns, but soon began to give them names. And they would give them names of Highland clans, but also names of like cities or regions. And these names, still at this point, were not meant to be representative in any way. They were just names to help classify them. But where there was prosperity in Highland culture, there was also tension with the British. I cannot cover the history of the Jacobite rebellion here on this podcast. If you have seen Outlander, you know the history. Essentially, it was like there's like a disgraced royal member who was like, I actually am the king of England, and he like lived in Scotland and got people like the Highlanders to help rebel, and the British were like, abso-fruitly freaking not, and squashed the rebellion. That's a very, very oversimplified thing that was going on, but essentially there's claims to the throne, people were pissed, and blah, it all happened in Scotland. So there's a very famous battle called the Battle of Culloden in 1746, in which the British army defeated this Jacobite uprising. The British government was hell-bent on purging the Highlands of its culture and crushing the clan system after this battle, because the clans joined this disgraced royal, tried to rebel, and then the British government squashed rebellion and was like, you know what? F the Highlands and F you too. So in 1746, they passed an act called the Act of Prescription, which made the wearing of tartan, among other things like carrying weapons, a penal offense. The act was rigorously enforced. And again, if you've seen Outlander, you know what I mean. Like, Highlander culture was basically being stripped from the Scottish clans, and you were severely punished if you broke this act. Anyway, the act was eventually repealed in 1785, but a lot of the Highlanders had lost their enthusiasm for their traditional dress. Many of the weavers had died. The details of the old patterns were lost. Fragments of old tartans were rotted. And kind of like the culture was deteriorating. It's sad. But then started the Great Tartan Revival in the early 1800s. In 1819, the Wilson's Key Pattern Book was published, and it included 250 tartan patterns, about 100 of which were given names. Wilson designed some of the tartan patterns himself, but most of the patterns that were in his book, he collected from, like, word of mouth, like, Scottish people. Like, he was able to collect old tartan patterns and publish them in this book. With its publication and the names given to the tartan patterns, there were Scottish expats who grew up outside of the Highlands. They became interested in preserving the Highland culture. A lot of these expats assumed that tartans had always been named and representative of actual clan affiliations. Remember, they're not at this point. If you're at this point, if you're in the Highlands and you are wearing tartan, you're wearing whatever tartan you like. But the expats, after the publication of this book, were like, oh, this is called the Mackenzie tartan? That must mean the Mackenzies wear this tartan. That wasn't necessarily the case.
And then you're like, oh, shoot. I got to get all new tartan.
Exactly. So, funnily, the Highland Society of London wrote to Scottish clan chiefs asking them to submit samples of their clan tartans. But many of the chiefs had no idea what their clan tartans meant. So they would actually write to tartan suppliers being like, what is our specific clan tartan? I didn't think we had one. So it's kind of like, this is kind of like when it started that clan chiefs started to be like, oh, maybe we should have a specific tartan for our specific clan. Then in 1822, King George IV visited Edinburgh and suggested that the people attend the official function wearing their respective tartans. This was called a Tartan Fest. It was partly organized by Sir Walter Scott, who's famous historian, poet, novelist. I know him from The Bride of Lammermoor. I'm not sure if that rings a bell to any of our listeners. Anyway, so King George goes to Edinburgh. He's like, all the clan chiefs are coming to my party wearing their tartans. And again, the clan chiefs were like, we don't have tartans. So they figured it out really quick. They all picked their proper clan tartan. And it's believed that this is the event that sort of sparked the creation of many new tartans or the renaming of tartans for the occasion. And from this point forward, the idea of was firmly established that in order to be a proper tartan, it has to be named. And so this is kind of when clans start picking their tartans specifically. Let's see. Though the idea of clan tartans came out of this 1822 Tartan Fest, tartans can be representative of many different things. Some tartans represent families, towns, districts, corporations, individuals, events. It could be anything. What makes a tartan official or authentic is not age or antiquity, but whether it is approved by a specific governing body. Not like a tartan governing body, but like, for instance, if the CEO of our company was like, this is our company's tartan, and it has this name, that is now an official tartan, if that makes sense. Okay. So what exactly is a clan tartan? It's not necessarily the tartan that your ancestors would have worn 100 years ago. Highlanders traditionally would have selected any tartan, like I said before. However, it is a fact that tartans today have a meaning. And so when you wear a tartan and it has a name, it's probably named that for a specific clan now, which is interesting. Most today will select a tartan based on what they're feeling or for some clan affiliation. You don't have to wear your clan-specific tartan unless it's required by your clan, like on a function day or something. So you can wear any tartan that you like, but if you wear the Mackenzie tartan, it's likely because you are from the Mackenzie clan. Let's see. There are other types of tartan. There are dress tartans, which is what Brooke Shields wore in that Netflix
A
Christmas
Castle
movie.
for Christmas.
A Castle for Christmas, yes. Originally worn by women. Generally, they would have like lighter patterns, but it can be any dress that's made out of tartan. There's mourning tartans, like MOURN, generally black and white. There are hunting tartans, which are dark in color, worn for sport specifically. And then there's chief tartans, which is for personal use of the chief and his immediate family only.
Ooh, okay. Exclusive.
Yes. I am going to send you 5 pictures of the 5 most famous tartans, and we're going to talk a little bit about them. So yes, I'm going to talk about the 5 most famous, or 5 of the most famous tartans in Scotland, and just some very general history. The first is the Royal Stuart. This is Scotland's most famous tartan, and I feel like when you look at it, it feels like, oh, this is tartan. This is like kind of like a very Scottish vibe, right? The Royal Stuart comes from the Royal House of Stuart, which was founded by King Robert II, who came from a long line of Scottish kings. The Royal Stuart tartan was also the personal tartan of Queen Elizabeth II, which might explain why the tartan became so popular because of her. In theory, the tartan was not allowed to be worn unless you had express permission from the Queen. But things became more lax as time went on, and the tartan, those shortbread cookies that have like a tartan pattern on the bag, or like that's Royal Stuart. So it's been used everywhere. People don't ask the royal family to use it, and they're pretty chill about it. Then
again, describe the colors.
Yes, it is red and green, I think, are the main colors, but then there are alternating stripes of blue, yellow, and white as well. It's pretty nice. The next.
That's my favorite one.
So nice. It's called the Black Watch. And this one it's different shades of blue and green with some like darker, I wouldn't say black necessarily, but gray maybe. It's very nice. And the checks on this one are smaller, I think, than the checks on the black or on the Royal Stuart.
They're uniform.
They're more uniform. The Royal Stuart had kind of like longer lines, bigger boxes, whereas the Black Watch one is much more uniform. So the Black Watch tartan comes from the infamous infantry battalion of the Regiment of Scotland. Although it was originally known as the Government Tartan and Grant Hunt Tartan, the name Black Watch name may have come from the dark tartan uniforms that the battalion used to wear. This is darker, so now it's called the Black Watch tartan. There are also theories that suggest that the name is referring to the Black Hearts of the pro-government militia who sided with the enemies of Scotland. Yes, so the Black Watch Battalion started wearing the tartan in the 1700s, meaning that the Black Watch tartan has now been worn by Scottish soldiers for nearly 300 years, which is crazy. And similar to the Royal Stuart, the Black Watch was originally not supposed to be worn by anybody other than the soldiers, but it has changed in modern times.
I feel like this is like school uniform skirt.
Yes, 100%. Yes. So this is the Ramsey tartan. So the original Ramsey tartan is red, black, and white. So it's big blocks of red, thick stripes of black, and then small stitching of white. And I think it's like a very basic plaid. You know, when you think of like a black and white or a black and red plaid, like on a man's shirt, you might think of this pattern. Okay. So it's originally red, black, and white, but you might also see it called Ramsey blue, in which case it is blue, black, and white, which I like the Ramsey blue a lot, actually. I like that shade of blue. The Ramsey tartan comes from the Ramsey clan, which is situated in the lowlands of Scotland, just south of Edinburgh. The clan played a pivotal role in several Scottish wars, including the Wars of Scottish Independence, the Anglo-Scottish War, and even various civil wars. The Ramseys were proud to call two castles their home, Brecon Castle in Angus and Dalhousie Castle in Midlothian. Famous Ramseys include Chef Gordon Ramsay. Okay. He's part of the Ramsey clan. Scottish poet Alan Ramsay and John William Ramsay, a Scottish politician. So the next is called the Hamilton Grey. And this one is, like the name may or may not suggest to you, a gray colored tartan. So it has various shades of gray, like a lighter gray, a darker gray, and then it's cut by some kind of vibrant white stripes. The Hamilton Grey tartan comes from the Hamilton clan, who, although were originally loyal to the English, eventually became loyal supporters of the famous Robert the Bruce. Following the Battle of Bannockburn, the Hamiltons were awarded the town of Cadzow, which they soon renamed Hamilton, a name that it's still called today. Let's see. In the town, the Hamiltons resided in Hamilton Palace, which at the time was the largest non-royal residence in the whole of Europe, which is wild.
Wow.
And then the last, I keep mentioning the Mackenzie tartan, and that's the last one we're going to be talking about. It's called the Mackenzie Modern, which comes from the Mackenzie clan. It's got some really dark blue, a nice emerald green, and it's cut with stripes of white and bright red. So yes, it comes from the Mackenzie clan, and the Mackenzies were originally situated in the Highlands of Scotland in the Kintail Mountains. And although they were supporters of Robert the Bruce, much like the Hamilton clan, the Mackenzies were notorious for fighting with other clans and had well-known feuds with the Monroe and MacDonald clans. Although they supported the Jacobite Rising, many of the Mackenzies were divided, and there were plenty of infightings in the clan. If you've seen Outlander, the Mackenzie clan is heavily featured in Outlander. Nevertheless, the clan survived, they're still going today, and the chief of their clan still lives at Castle Leod, which is a big feature in Outlander as well. So yeah. I want to end by saying I found a really fun TikTok account called USA Kilts, in which case they do these really fun TikToks, although like go to their employees, be like, okay, what's the best tartan for Christmas? What's the best? They did one for Valentine's Day. So yeah, I've seen them. I'll try to remember to put one of the TikToks in the episode description for you to see. But there are so many different tartans, and there are so many different cool names for the tartan. And I'm kind of like, I want to do everything tartan now. Yeah.
Yeah. My cousin-in-law's dad is Scottish, and he wore a kilt, like, you know, because that's their formal wear to a wedding. And it's like, you look so sharp.
Right? What like, do you remember what the clan name was? You don't have to say it, but do you remember?
No, I don't remember. I want to say it was like blue and green, but I don't remember.
That's cool.
And he had the little like flask thing. I don't know what it is, like the round bag.
Yeah.
I don't know. It looks like
that's very traditional as well.
Yeah.
Doing this research, I remembered that my dad's really into Ancestry.com, and he like traced our family back to various parts of Europe. And on his mother's side, so my grandmother's side, he discovered that like one of our ancestors came from Scotland. And so all last night I was texting him to like try and figure out what the clan name was.
Yeah.
And I figured it out. And we looked at like all of the certificates of them leaving Scotland in the 1600s to move to Northern Ireland they lived in Ulster, Londonderry, where Derry Girls is, you know, based, and then eventually settled in great old Pennsylvania. So that's how we got here. And so, of course, I found the clan tartan, and I have yarn in those colors. And I think I'm going to crochet some tartan, cup holders out of them.
Cute. Man, crocheting tartan, though, that's...
I found some patterns.
Yeah.
And it looks tricky, but it's basically just color work.
Yeah. It's just a lot. But
just to have the amount of colors. You see how many colors there are, and like the shading, I think, is going to be the hardest part. Like when the colors connect. When the colors in tartan cross over one another, it's not like big, heavy blocks of color. Like it almost looks
interwoven.
Like interwoven. It's really nice. But yeah. So now I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to Scotland and find my clan and be like,
hey guys. Hello.
So
I'm obviously
do I get a castle now? Like, okay, give me all of the tartan. Thank you.
Well, I wish you luck in that. I want to see a picture of your tartan, your ancestral tartan. So send it over.
This is white culture, so
yeah. We take who we can get.
Yes, we do.
Well, very cool.
Yeah,
makes me want to wear a plaid skirt.
Right?
Tartan skirt.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Makes you want to wear a plaid. Annoying.
Yeah. Be like, actually it's tartan.
So,
well, thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah, seriously, thanks. That was fun, I think.
If you want to talk to us, you can find us on Twitter at The Good Eve Girls.
Or Instagram at The Good Evening Girls.
Or TikTok at The Good Eve Girls. And if you notice, some of you might actually be here from TikTok. But yeah, we have been posting some TikToks about different topics that we've done, and it's been fun to look back on some of the things we talked about, and like I feel like some we uncover some interesting trivia, so it's fun to share it with the world. But
it is. And if you are here from TikTok, thanks for hopping over. I appreciate you,
and for listening to the very end of the episode. This is a special shout out just for you. So thank you.
Stick around. So come on down. And as always, keep curious. We will be here again at another time. Promise.
Yes. At some time in the future. Who knows when? Maybe next week. Maybe in 2 weeks.
Yes.
But we will see you then.
Catch you on the flip side.
Bye.